Good morning. It is 10 o'clock on the eastern coast of the United States of America. I had a full cup of coffee and I'm ready to go. Now, today these things usually take about 3 hours or so. And so I can't do that today. I have to do something for my foster daughter. And so what I'll do is I will show a clip of an hour and 37-minute clip. Because I did an hour and 37 minutes better than what happened is I recorded the top panel in QuickTime, and the dang thing froze up on me. Didn't tell me. So I lost the first top half, but the bottom half is actually better. So I'll show that, and then I mess around with the top half anyway. So I'm going to get started. Tomorrow I'll do the lettering. I'll show a video of me inking with a mechanical pencil, page 42, and then I was toying with the idea of starting on page 56 live, where I just, instead of doing video of me doing it, I'm going to just do it live, and then I'll be 4 or 5 days ahead, and I'll just keep on doing page to page. And those who come to watch my broadcasts will get a preview of next week's pages. Well, not necessarily the word balloons and the dialogue. But here we go. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that screen. And I'm going to start sharing the video I have set up, which, there we go. So now I'm going to start that thing. There we go. So here I am. Blueboy is a swamper. He clears brush. He's 12 years old. They're not going to let him do anything ambitious, which I get to as we go along. I'll tell you why that's so. And so here he is, and now I'm figuring out. Yeah. So now I'm gonna on the color. Yeah, here I'm starting to color the background, which is consistent with all the colors that I've been using in this chapter. This chapter has a color scheme that I am using. Watching this on my phone also. I got a little bit of echo there. Okay. And so this color scheme is one that I had a lot of experience with art historians at both Missouri State, Dr. Strickland, I believe her name was, Diane Strickland, wonderful lady. And I took one art history course in graduate school on Renaissance. And the art historian, whose name I don't remember, was 33 years ago. She was big on Veronese. My first drawing teacher ever, Susie Ettinger, God bless her, wonderful, wonderful artist. She's big on Pontormo. She loved Pontormo, and I love Pontormo too. He's really good, and his color is superb. I steal color schemes from all these guys. I love it. I'm going to swipe color schemes. I'm like the upper class shoplifter. who gets nabbed at Neiman Marcus. And they ask her why a wealthy lady like her would be shoplifting. She says, well, it's none of your business, but all you need to know is that I only steal from the best stores. And that's what I look at. If you're going to learn color theory, learn it from people like Pontormo, Veronese, Titian. Those guys really rocked. And so here, almost all of this panel here is mainly variations on a brownish earth color. I don't believe I use any pure color in this one, but I use that. Blueboy's taken off his jacket, and now he's only got his white shirt, which about allows me to have a high contrast that makes him the focal area, and I don't have any problems with it, organizing the space doing that. So here I'm doing my typical fill it in, fill that thing in, and then I can play around with it, dodging and burning. Okay. While I was helping my wife do a little project of hers last night, I got out my art sticks. It's basically Prismacolors. You don't know what Prismacolors are. They're colored pencils. They make some art sticks that are basically colored pencils, but they behave like pastels. A combination between pastels and colored pencils. So every month I send my VIP supporters from Patreon. I send the guys who really pony up and help me out. I send them an original drawing every month. Last night I did those, and they're a couple of my Doofus characters. And the first one who tells me, this is the one I want, I'll send that one to them. The other one gets the one that is left over. They're all both pretty good. I kind of like them. And boy, I love art sticks, man. It's like you have all of the coolness of pastel, but it doesn't smudge. You can't take your finger and smudge it. You don't do that. You use when you want to smudge something, you want to get a blending, you just use a lighter color. White's a really good one to use to smudge everything. I'm gonna have to go to dickblick.com and see if I can get a few more packs of these. I've had this hanging around the house for a while. I love this thing. Man. It works full color. And you also get to do just a simple drawing. I'll show you that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll do that. I'll do that. And I'm going to work on, I've got my smartphone now. I could use my smartphone, which is what I'm using for my, when I videotape me drawing the line work for on Bristolboard. I have a tripod that I made. It's not really a tripod, it's just a boom that I made out of PVC pipe. And then I used a selfie phone holder and a tripod, and I wrapped the tripod around the PVC pipe, and it basically is it's a great little extension to the tripod. And I have an old tripod that I have had for years. It's right above my drawing board. But I could probably use that smartphone as my camera for a live stream. I'm going to experiment with that. One of the cool things about StreamYard, which is what I'm using to do this, is that I can record it for an experiment and then see whether it works. If it works, then I can actually do that one day, probably soon, and show how I draw if anybody really gives you it. Anyway, towards the end of this, I realized that blank brown area there, that's one of those problems that happens sometimes in Photoshop. You get that line across the drawing, and thank God for Control Z. Just keep on going, Control Z, Control Shift Z, and until you finally get rid of it. I have to do that in a few seconds. Yeah, it didn't work. That's shortcuts, but it went in a second. I'll use that. I'm just filling in here. One of the premises of the comic in the story is that Blueboy's a 12-year-old, 6'8" kid. And the doc says it's not giantism, he's not sick, he's just a big kid. But as he, because Grandpa's got rheumatism, Blueboy has quit school and become a lumberjack about the age of 10. And he's still pretty big at that age. He's still way over 6 feet tall. And so he's been working out like this for the last couple of years, and he's starting to become massive. And he gets bigger every day. So eventually he becomes like this huge sucker, which is not too much different than the person I based this on. Through similar experiences. This is not much different than the experience that kids went through before the child labor laws, which have a lot to do with what's the guy's name? Benny Hicks, I believe, a high school teacher. Quit his job, went around the country, showing working conditions of children. And children were used for supplementing the income of a poor family a lot in the 19th century. And the problem is that with the industrial revolution coming along, and cotton mills and things like that springing up all over the South, the children were working in factories, which is not so hot for a child, and they were getting injured in factories. And this guy showed that children were getting their hands mangled in machines, which wouldn't have happened too much to Blueboy. All he's doing is dragging brush. He won't become a real timberman for a while. But kids worked from a very early age. You can get an education. It's not until really the 1970s that poor people got to go to school without having to work and save up the money for school. That's because of the Pell Grant that was instituted about 1973 or so. Came in handy for me. I tell all my kids, but if you can, get on the Pell Grant. Your best to leave college without a huge debt. It's really difficult these days. There's been an explosion in college tuition. My first semester in college, the tuition was $140 a semester. That's 1971. That's pretty good. 171. It's $140 a semester. That's less than the price of one course at a community college now. I don't know if they'll ever solve that problem. The best way is to find yourself a school that'll give you a decent education and not spend a huge amount of money in undergraduate school. And then try to get a teaching fellowship where you'll get teaching a tuition remission in graduate school if you decide to go to graduate school, or get yourself an undergraduate degree that'll actually just straight into a career. So that is not the reason you went to college classically. Classically, it was to get an education, not to prepare for a career. But things have gotten so expensive, you have to think about a career. And then you should be seeking out knowledge. It's my thesis, and nobody gets educated in college. I say this based upon my experience. You learn how to become educated in college. You acquire the tools that will enable you to become educated in later life. All real education comes as an adult, really as an adult. Because education comes with experience also. So you see, I'm filling in that kind of empty brown space that's above Blueboy in that middle right panel. And now I'm just drawing it and adding elements and making it hopefully more interesting. And it becomes background. So it's not just, it doesn't become non-space. If I just let it stay like that, it just becomes non-space. Over on the left, that's in a way non-space, but since he fills the entire panel, it's not a big problem. It's more like a regular portrait. Wow. I said yesterday, which I won't be able to do today, but I will be able to do it tomorrow, that opening screen that I use for these live streams, there's a panel that I did in which I talked about the fact that all of the Browns were wanderers, every last one of them. And there's a silhouette in that it's not just simply a silhouette drawing, but it also has gradations of value. I turned it into a sepia drawing in Photoshop, but I did that all with a big mechanical pencil. And so I'm going to show that. And I have a couple of other drawings that I've done just like that, using this little mechanical pencil that I found, happened upon in a ceramics teacher's studio. And now I don't sharpen pencils. If you're like me, you don't like sharpening pencils, continuously having to resharpen pencils. You don't do that with mechanical pencils. And I am so pleased that Alex Toth used mechanical pencils for his pencil. But he didn't have Photoshop. He didn't have scanners. This is way back then, back in the 50s and 60s. Started in the 40s when he was a teenager. And according to his mentor, he said the guy could draw anything. And when he got really good in the 50s is when he became superb, just so beautiful, such a beautiful draftsman. He actually made it palatable to read romance comics. He actually made it interesting to read romance comics. And I have an entire collection of his romance comics that I found at Comic Book Plus. That's just absolutely wonderful. And there's an Alex Toth archive that you can find on the web. I think it's based in Argentina, but there's an English version of it also that has just about everything that has ever been published by Alex Toth, except for the books they did on him, which I have to buy. I have to buy that because I have to have everything that Alex Toth ever did. He's just so wonderful. And I owe him a lot. I owe this guy a great deal. His Zorro comic taught me how to read. Gave me the desire to read because I said, well, what do those little letters mean, Mom? Well, why don't we teach you? Here's your alphabet. And I learned the alphabet in a day or two. And then I started putting it together, and then I could read. By the time I got to the first grade, heck, I was top of the class. It's not too difficult to read. Dick and Jane went out to play ball. Okay, that's easy. Zorro went to bang Sergeant Garcia on the head with a mallet. He didn't really hurt him, but Sergeant Garcia is not so bad. It's interesting that Sergeant Garcia is a lot like Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. We're supposed to like this guy, even though he's one of the he's hanging out with the bad guys, and Sergeant Schultz, of course, is a Nazi. He's one of those involuntary Nazis. I don't know if there was such a thing. Maybe there were. Anyway. Oops, there I coughed. Not supposed to do that. I'm glad this doesn't have to come up to broadcast television standards. I'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay, so I'm putting in shadows. Am I using the shadow? Yes, I'm using the shadow layer. In shadows. One of the nice things about using digital color that if you're familiar with painting, if you've been a painter, if you've been painting for years and years and years, it's not too difficult to adapt it to this working environment. By the way, I have a gaming headset with a microphone that I'm going to arrive on Monday, so that my voice becomes a little clearer. If I start mumbling, it just cuts out. There's not much I'm going to be able to do about that, or the fact that I went to the Joe Biden School of Public Speaking. I mutter and stumble, and no, that's nothing I can do about it. As long as I get like Joe gets his ideas across, I get my ideas across. That's all that really matters. I'm not a motivational speaker. I wrote a good friend of mine last night and said, I will never be a public motivational speaker. You can't him and haw like I do. My poor students have to go through this. I had a girl at the end. I was teaching online all during April because of the coronavirus shutdown. And so I was using Blackboard, and I held my lectures at the same time every day as my regular class, took attendance. Now, let's not veer too off. This is an on-demand class, because if it was on-demand class, you'll never get around to it. A lot of people, because their parents had lost their jobs or were furloughed, they were out there working at Walmart or Publix or something like that, bagging groceries and stocking toilet paper and stuff like that. So I tried to keep it as simple as I could, and to keep it as much like regular class as I could. I'm wondering whether or not we're going to go back to regular classes in June. Our classes have been delayed until June because of this lockdown. Who knows if we're going to come back the way we were? I hope we do. I prefer face-to-face. If we go back to face-to-face, actually, no matter what we do, if we're holding classes, I won't do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays during June and most of July. Hopefully by that time, somebody will give me these poor kids have to put up with my hemming and hawing. There's the top panel that I lost when QuickTime messed up on me. I think I'm going to mess around with increasing the contrast here. Using, here what am I using? I'm using my brush tool and a brown, and it's in the shadow, so I'll just do that. I think I mess around with the horse first. Nope. Mess around with Joby. Yeah, we'll mess around with Joby. The shadows in Joby. She does remarkably look like watercolor. Photoshop did a good job on creating watercolor effects. Whoever designed this brush, I don't know if the brush has that as a feature of it. Maybe it does. I thought seriously about creating watercolor brushes at one time. Brushes of my own. I may still do it. There's lots of tutorials you can find. That teach you how to make your own brushes. Right now, I'm too busy to make my own brushes. Now I'm going to mess around with the color of Joby's jacket, because I missed something. I just lay this stuff in real rough when I first way in color. Unlike watercolor, you really can't mess it up. With watercolor, you put together two complementary colors and do too much, especially if you put in two complementary colors, and then add another color so that you produce some real mud. You can't get back from that. You can't ever fix that. But in Photoshop, digital watercolor, well, no matter what you do, you can erase it. You can do it over. So there is a product out there called liquid watercolor paper that you can buy. Dick Blick has it. It comes in a bottle. You work on your watercolor. There's a part you don't like. You just brush on that watercolor paper and you let it dry and you redo that area. Woo! I like that idea. I have to try that. At least recommend it to all my watercolor friends. It's a good idea. So I've got so much to do on this 9-book series. My Lord. I'm going to be doing this for the next at least 10 years. Maybe a dozen years. Doesn't matter. I'm in good health. I take my medicine every day. I get on the exercise bike for 45 minutes to an hour. I keep my stamina up. I get enough sleep. I'm going to prepare. 67 now. I know from everything, from having known people like this and having worked in geriatric nursing in college, that in your 70s, you start to go downhill. It's a precipitous drop. So by the time you get to your 70s, you have to be at a higher level of stamina and physical fitness. So the drop, which is inevitable, is you drop from a higher level, and then when you drop, you don't go to such a low level. There we go. Messing around with that horse. It's not my best horse, but Bernie Wrightson once said, not every dead man drawing can be a masterpiece. It isn't. You just cover it with shadow. That's a good idea, isn't it? In a way, comics is like doing film. There are scenes that are indescribably beautiful in movies like Fort Apache. It's one of the films I show in my art history class when I was looking at video, because it has a certain set of plot problems that I like to point out. But towards the end, right before the massacre, there are some shots that Ford and his cinematographer put in there that are worthy of any artist who's ever worked in photography. Any photographer who's ever done photography would love to have taken those shots. They are just simply gorgeous. Not every shot is that beautiful, but those things really stand out. And that's the way it is in comics also. Can't make every dadgum thing into a dad-burned masterpiece. But when you come up with a panel that really rocks, well, it carries the burden for the rest of the story. And then you work your best on the ones that are just to advance the plot, which I think this page is to advance the plot. You have to know something about Blueboy and what he's doing out there in the lumber camp to set up the rest of the story. And I get now. This is a decent drawing of a horse. This is not bad. I like this one. It's simple, not meant to look like something that Jerome did in painting Napoleon crossing the Alps. But yeah, I kind of like it. I said yesterday that I went to Calder Race Course and Gulfstream Park a lot in the last 10 or 15 years. And drew horses. Beautiful horses. So many beautiful horses. It just blows your mind having to do it. And then we have a place in the western part of Miami-Dade County called Horse Country. And I guess lots of places in the United States and other places have areas where there's just a conglomeration of horse ranches. And my wife used to go out there to take horse riding lessons. So I used to go out there and take video of horses in the pasture. Occasionally somebody would be riding a horse in the neighborhood, and I'd stop and talk to them, take video of that, or take photographs of the guy on his horse, the woman on her horse. And that's a real nice thing about being in a place like this where there's just all types of, there's farms, and then there's the metropolitan area. Don't get that too often. I get that in Long Island. Wasn't able to get out to go to Long Island and do that stuff when I was living in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, it's like city life the whole time. City life. Oh, now I've got this guy. Okay, a little bit of shadowing. Pause. Backside. Let's see what's look like here. Pretty good. I'm going to tackle that area that's all this burnt orange later on. Add a little shadow to it. Blueboy. I'm watching this on a tablet, on Facebook, and on the fly, they provide captions. Almost none of them are correct. It sounds like somebody who's English is their third language is doing the captions. Which used to be that way on YouTube. The captioning was just horrible, and I think I used it in one of my classes. I said, if you want to do something surrealistic, go to YouTube and transcribe all of the closed captions you have there, and then create some images for those, because they're all wacko. They don't make any sense. Sure, that must be where they got bad lips and syncing when they did that series. I must have been looking at the YouTube's captioning and saying, "This is fun." Oh, try and draw horses. Sit. It's best to keep the chops going. Draw lots of horses. Oh, yeah, I like horses, man. They're cool. We left the farm before I got to be a horseman like my dad. But it's like everything as well. Sooner or later, I'm going to get finished with this top panel and go on to the bottom. That's the plan. Okay. Saw that text on the screen. I use a template underneath all this that I downloaded from Mixam uh, printers. It's going to be my printer for the hard copy version of the comic. And when you're designing these comics, it's a real good idea to design them using the specs that your printer has given you. And so that's what I'm doing. I think I drew those rocks there just now. Did I just do that? I was distracted. I draw a horse's head. It was not the best horse's head I ever did, but it's life. I'll put up some of my old Gulfstream horse drawings soon. There's all types of things I guess I could do. So where am I? Okay, and I'm going to go to the bottom panels. Finally getting around to that. Which are kind of the fun panels for me. Why do we get? The captions on Facebook said, "Why do we get?" What? I never said that. This is my third day. It's Wednesday, May 6th, 2020. Hard to believe 2020. 1953, 2020. Man, 2001 Space Odyssey. Remember 2001 Space Odyssey? How everything was so futuristic, so incredibly way out there when it was done back in 1968. It had video phones. Who would have thought of that? I remember the first day I went to the movie theaters to see 2001: Space Odyssey. I sat through 3 showings. Back then, you could do that. Back in the early 70s, you could go and sit in a movie theater all day long if you wanted to, and they wouldn't throw you out. They let you just sit through all of the deals, and you only paid like 75 cents to get in. I watched it 3 times, and it had video phones in it, and it was AT&T, or no, it was Bell. I think it was Bell telephone or something like that, or AT&T. I don't remember. I have to look it up. And that was a big deal. Now video phones, video conferencing, no big deal. And instead of on a thing on the wall, it's in your hand. I've done Zoom conferencing. I've done Blackboard collaborations. You're watching this live, aren't you? And there's a second person on. Welcome. Say something in the comments, would you? My second person. God bless you. I feel like the Maytag repairman. Anyway, what was I saying? You're watching this live on. They left. Oh well. You're watching this live. I'm watching this live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. On Facebook, I'm watching it on a Fire tablet. On my smartphone, I'm watching it on YouTube live. Who'd have thunk of this in 1968 when a landline was a high design telephone was a Princess phone. And the big deal was that you used push buttons. Well, I think on the original ones, they had a rotary. I kind of enjoyed the rotary ones. And so those were wonderful times in a way. Well, they were tough times too. 60s was not an idyllic time for anybody. Silent it was. Tough time. It was like the 60s and the 19th century, 60s and the 20th century. Both tough times. Really, really tough times. Yeah, it's the teens. Oh, the 20s now. But I'm confident that the economy is going to bounce back. This same thing that's going on right now happened between 1918 and 1920, and the economy roared back in the 1920s. And unlike the 1920s, we have provisions set into law that prevent the stock poolers and the crooks from bringing on the Great Depression. So we'll be all right. Now, our biggest problem is that we're giving away trillions of dollars in economic stimulus, and that is not free money. That's going to devalue the value of the dollar, and we're going to have inflation. I can't even go to the grocery store without spending over $200 a week. I used to be able to spend $125 a week. Now it's $230 a week. Going to come back to bite us, but hopefully we'll figure something out. Right now we're just going to let our grandchildren pay the bill. Oh well. I am just an old retired school teacher. I have nothing to do. Nothing I say will make any difference. I'm just going to live my life and try to help Widows and orphans. That's what it's all about, widows and orphans. People who cannot help themselves. And, everybody can do that. Blue Boy. Blue Boy's a good kid. I don't know if you're a writer, and my second person dropped in, then dropped out. That's a shame. You miss out on all the cool stuff. Um, um, if you're writing an extended story like this, you start to develop affection for your characters, people that you made up. That's an interesting thing. That the thing that you create, you start to love. That happens to a lot of people. It happens to all parents. Imagine looking at a little baby and saying, "I don't know about you." It's impossible. Looking at a child and saying, you're just a blob of protoplasm. I don't need to worry about you. That didn't happen. You're the hardest criminal doesn't feel like that. Even the hardest criminal, just a lowlife that you might find in a prison, has a soft spot for children. In fact, if you're a criminal that has abused children, and you go to a prison, your life's going to end real soon, because you're the lowest rung of the ladder, and even criminals don't hurt children. They steal, they murder, they do all types of stupid stuff that they really wish they hadn't done, but they never hurt. They can always say, "I never hurt any kids." Anyway, I don't have to worry about that. There's no kids hurt in this story. Except when Ma decides that Blue Boy needs a switching. Now, if you're not a hillbilly, you may not know what a switching is. Switching is when you have done something wrong and you're a kid, and your ma says, "Go cut me a switch." And a switch is just a little branch. It's not a branch. It's more like a bunch of collection of twigs. And your mom takes it and she, goes after your legs and everything, just enough that you wish you hadn't done it, which was normal back in the last century. You don't do it now. I don't know anybody who does that now. In fact, I asked my wife, I says, "Did you guys ever get switched? Did you ever get paddled or anything like that?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, you're not country folks. It's not necessary to do that to kids." I realized, well, I've never paddled or switched a kid. But if you're going to have a real story about something that happened a century ago, and they're country folks, they're basically hill people, you're going to have some kids getting switched. Yeah, that's the way it was. And so if it's going to be authentic, you're going to have to do it. And Ma's a good Ma, and she doesn't give. She said, "I'm going to give you a beating that you'll a switching that you'll remember when you're an old man." And it's not really that bad. In fact, it's hard to take a guy who's 6'8" and make him too scared. He just gets tired of it. But it also tells you something about that culture. I know a lot about that culture. Is that no matter what's going on, no child resists their parents in this culture, in that culture. Parents rule, and if they're actually good parents and care about their children, give them a good upbringing. That's the way it should be. Parents, if you can't trust your parents, you better hang it up. Anyway, I designed the characters in this story to be excellent parents. Anyway, what's my next deal? Let me see. I just have to look and see. I'm still in the tone. So I'm either going to lighten or I'm going to darken the tonal area. So I'm using a brush, so I'm going to change that or add it in there. Yeah, I've going to use my eyedropper tool to figure out what the color of Blueboy's knee breeches are. Mom can't make him long pants now because there's no use. He's shooting up. So she's promised she'll make him some long pants once he stops growing. But it hasn't happened yet. It won't happen in the near future either. There we go. Oh, let me put a scrolling banner at the bottom of my video. Let me see. Edit. Images. Chapter 755. Okay. This is where it is. This is where you'll see this. This is where you'll see this page on the webcomic. That's the address. Should be scrolling in a few seconds. There we go. There's a time delay here. I can see it. Take a few seconds for you guys to see it. Because, here we go. Oh, there we go. Blueboy Brown, page 055. 148 pages in the comic, so to number it correctly in my webcomic, it has to have that 0 prefixing it. So let that done. Then I'm going to go find another color that's a little lighter. And I'm going to put some shadows in Blueboy's arms and his shirt. Or, no, I'm putting in flesh color. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. But I'm doing it in the tone area. That was a mistake. Oh, well, that's another. It works out in the end. Perfectly. So I've got about 35 minutes left of this. When we get to the end of this, I'm going to say ta-ta, show you my end screen. I will see you tomorrow, and I'll do the lettering. I'll do page 42, show you how I ink that with a mechanical pencil. I guess I'll keep on doing that, as I go along. Show that this little technique is real useful. And I'm a retro old school cartoonist. Uh, my first loves were Alex Toth, Kurt Swan. I'm a Superman fan back in the early 60s, early 60s. My first Superman comic that I remember that I just absolutely adored was a Wayne Boring um, drawn episode called Superman Under the Green Sun. And I just loved that. And I think the next issue was The Death of Superman. And Kurt Swan was the artist. George Klein was the inker. And boy, I loved that. I was crying like a little baby boy. And, Superman died. That was the first Superman to die. So it wasn't an imaginary story. They had a lot of imaginary stories back in the 60s. But it was a real one. And of course, I won't tell you what the plot resolution was because you may have never seen it, but I suggest you go and find a copy of that. Probably find it on Comixology or something like that. If you go to DC, you can probably find it. It's worth going if you can't get a physical copy. It probably costs way too much money, but you can get a digital copy. It'll probably for a couple of bucks. We're going to see. That was during the heyday, the time when Kurt Swan and George Klein were at their tops. Kurt Swan's had four great inkers. First was Stan Kay and a guy named, I think, Ray Brumley or something like that. And then George Klein and then Murphy Anderson. Those are his great. And later on, when after George Klein left for Marvel and then unfortunately passed away, so he couldn't come back. Boy, they had a dearth. Just had a whole lineup of inkers on Kurt Swan stuff that left well after you've been spoiled by George Klein. And then they finally got Murphy Anderson, which was a good idea. Dan Adkins did a few of them. Winslow Mortimer did a few of them. And Winslow Mortimer was wonderful. I may have met him once at Neil Adams' studio in Manhattan back in the late 80s. Now, I don't remember if it was Winslow Mortimer or Bob Oxner that I met. I should talk to the guy who introduced me. He was working for Neil Adams at the time. But no matter who it was, I did homage to that great comic book artist. It was either Oxner or Winslow Mortimer. It may have been Winslow Mortimer, who was just he did a lot of World's Finest and Superman comic book covers back in the 50s. Absolutely superb. Bob Oxner did Jerry Lewis and Bob Hope. And he was really good too. I think he did some he may have done a little bit of Teen Titans. I don't remember. I should look that up. So those were the major anchors for Kurt Swan. Still ticked off the way DC treated Kurt Swan at when they decided that they wanted to change artists. They just put him out to pasture. What are you, guy worked for you all those years and you just put him out to pasture? That's not cool. Anyway, they did the same thing to Jerry Ordway. They shouldn't have done to Jerry Ordway either. Jerry Ordway, he was one of the few Superman artists that was Kurt Swan's equal. Boy, is he good. Still good. All these guys go over to Marvel and DC lets them go. Then DC wish they had them back, probably. So now I'm doing this, then I'll get into the blue of the sky. I've got to mess around with those clouds a little bit. And then I have to use my smudge tool to blend that area so that overlapping that happens in this watercolor effect doesn't become goofy looking. I think I do a little bit along the edge there, on the edge of that. Then I think I mess around with the background a little bit. I'm going to have to smudge the tone area. Yeah, I'm going to smudge this so the clouds don't look like they're cut out with a pair of scissors. And I'm messing around over on the left panel. That cabin works. And see. On 12 minutes, okay. It won't be long before we're finished with this. I bring this over here to kind of get some colors for it. I think I do it for the cloud. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay. I want to get that color for the sky. Yeah. Yeah. Our puppy, our corgi, is off on a play date today. You can do that with dogs. You do that in certain places in this country with children now, you get into trouble. But you can do that with dogs. He's swimming all day long. He absolutely loves it. He loves to swim. And, his doggy daycare provider sends us video of him swimming all over their swimming pool. He doesn't know it, but I'm going to set up a swimming pool in the backyard for him. I'm not big on swimming pools myself, but boy, he loves it. Now that's starting to come together a little bit. I'll have to mess around with some. And I think I'm going to play around with the shadows in the background. The cool thing about multiply mode is that every time you make a stroke, you're adding on to the intensity and the saturation of that color. I'm reading the captions on Facebook, and that's not what I said. Okay. If you would like to. Yeah, if you would like to support me, Patreon, there's the URL. For those who are VIP patrons, I send you an original drawing every month. In the United States. I sent one of my patrons a drawing. He lives in Europe, and it cost me $15. So he paid for the shipping. He's a good guy, but that's unless you pay for the shipping, I can't afford to send anybody a drawing every month who lives outside the United States. It's too prohibitive. It basically mean that I'm getting the support that I'm getting in Patreons for nothing. But if you live in the United States, I'll send you a little drawing if you're one of my VIP supporters. Every dime I make goes back into the comic. So I can get this thing off the ground. An awful lot of comics out there. It's a huge, huge population of comics being done. Just about every week, I heard there's like 400 comics coming out every week. So it's really easy to get lost in the crowd. So, but keep on plugging away. If the story's any good, and it's only my opinion that if this thing takes off, it's because I've written a story that resonates with people, that actually is interesting. Story is everything. When I was a young pup, Artie Romero and Artie Romero was in charge because he's the editor and publisher and everything. We went to Kansas City to interview Richard Corbin and Jan Sternad. And what an experience. We got to see Richard Corbin's studio, which is in his basement. I saw how he worked. An interesting thing that Richard Corbin did, I don't know if he still does it, these little miniature figures of all his characters that he could look at while he was working. Pretty smart thing to do. And that enabled him to look at different angles and everything like that. Smart guy. Jan Sternad, what he said in that interview is that the writing is so incredibly important in comics that if the writing isn't any good, nobody's gonna mess with it. The writing has to be superb, or it doesn't matter how good the comic is. That's pretty much the truth. At the time, I didn't want to admit it because, well, I was just a cartoonist. But you got to work on the writing. So hopefully, if I stand out, if I make any impression on anybody, because I crafted a story that hits people where they live. I'm sure there are other people doing hillbilly comics, but I don't know. I don't think they have the take they have in this. 19 minutes ago. Okay. Okay, we're getting close. I'm going to have to accentuate the blue in that lower right hand panel. Then I have to probably mess around with the shadows in Blueboy as he's leaning back. Okay, yeah. Here I've got, that's a good part of it. Let me see if I'm going to accentuate that sky up there. Yeah, I'm going to make that pure color instead of just, then I'll probably use the burn tool. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to use the burn tool for something here. Okay, that helps. Yeah, now we'll accentuate this. Look at this. Yeah, messing around with the running, I guess. Yeah, and I mean, give some texture to all that area. think I go to the top panel and do that also. Okay. Oh, I made a line. I hate when that happens. I have to go step backward, step backward, step backward, step backward, step backward. Go ahead, bud. Step backward. It's infuriating. At least you have Control Z. Of course, in Photoshop, you only have Control Z once. Yeah, do another combination. Okay, I think I'm going to go up to the top panel. That's what I'm found with that. Think. Oh yeah, I did something up here. I had I'm addressing that non-space thing going on that I had noticed before that I didn't like. So I put a directional line between. It goes put a line between that goes through Blueboy's head to lock him in. And another line there. How much more to go? Stop doing that. It's enough. Yeah, did some stuff down there too. Being persnickety. There you go, Pat. This must be where I stopped because I didn't go back upstairs to see what's going on the top panel. Oh well. I don't remember everything I do. It is 37. I got about a minute to go. Less than a minute. What do I do? I'm in the color deal. I'm going up there and taking a look to see whether it's any good. I said, look, I guess it'll have to be. Okay, I don't think I do anything beyond this, so I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Remind you that if you support me on Patreon, my VIP subscribers get an original drawing every month. This is what I'm sending out this month. And they'll be happy to get those. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I'll do the lettering, and then I'll do page 42, and then I'll get started on page 56. Okay, I will see you in the roundup. Okay, goodbye. Always share my ending screen. Have a good one. Don't take any wooden nickels.